Oops. Okay. I am forced to play to the hands of the React people out there. I'm just kidding. No, that's a joke. That's a joke. That's a joke. I actually am not forced to do anything. So let me explain my day. I can't do my homework because I need a 12-volt power supply. Gee, I wonder where there's a 12-volt power supply in my room. So, yeah. Uh, B. I could code. Do I want to code right now? It's like getting around that time when my eyesight just gets bad in the day, and like I won't lie, I kind of fucking feel tired. So that. C. I actually did not do the scary stream for April. So actually, I'm gonna end and I'm gonna come back right now. I'm just kidding. No, I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna rename it April Scary Stream, even though it's not April yet, or excuse me, even though it's past April, just because I forgot to do it. Like I said, April is one of those months that gets suspiciously sneaky. But like, come May, I am able to do whatever the fuck I want. I didn't even know next week was my last regular week. I was like so like I was ready to go into this week like, oh, I'm gonna beat myself up on this May 29th. And I'm like, wait a second, I don't have fucking school May 29th. The fuck? The last day of the semester is Friday the 26th. And like legally they should not be having us take a final that day. I swear to God. So yeah. Um ooh, I should check that one. So, hold up. I'm gonna check that out. Because I know I'm having a final this Wednesday. But like it's not just different circumstances for each class, right? That class just wanted to end early. Please don't plug in. So bright. And yeah, we'll get started right now. I don't have a topic. I that the scary stream has been in the back of my mind. I thought I did one, but then I noticed, oh shit, I uploaded it on like May 31st. That means I did it for actually May March 31st. No, I think that may have been March's because I know there was another one. I'm so this homework that's due Friday. It's just plot. This homework this Saturday. Well, I got all Saturday. Then this homework due Sunday. Oh wait, let me just chapter 10. I don't even know. Fuck chapters 10 on. Let me just let me just comment. Uh, what the fuck is chapter 10 on? See, this is what I'm talking about. I'm just so fucking distracted. Very good. ECE. Good, because at least I can see the stupid syllabus now. Oh, yeah, connect section. Hold up, just be patient with me. I need to get a few things out of the way. I just want to comment today. That way, like coming Saturday or whatever, I can just comment. Oh yeah, Z transform was so done with that. Whoa, this chapter's short. I know this question may be easy, but how? What? Right? Today's scary stream is on education. How scary it can be. Oh. I know this question may be easy, but how would taking a large sampling rate be a detriment to the Fine. Get audio quality. Good. Okay. That's all I needed to do. So that's fucking out of the way. I need to do a fucking SP, which means something I'll be fucking clicking. Actually, let me because this is just directly linked to like this syllabus. Let me see what the fuck. Who in the hell is calling me? I'm gonna answer it now. Hold on, I'll be back. Oh yeah, my sister. I just noticed I was fucking mute. Are you fucking kidding me? Alright. The point is, I was gonna say that like, I have four finals. One of them is next week on Wednesday, but it's complicated. I'll explain it later. Cause like I don't know, we'll have a final if everybody does bad. Like what? You curve the class, right? So yeah, so Monday the 15th, I have a final. It'll be an easy one. It's just sketching. Same thing with Thursday of that week. So Thursday the 18th, I'm gonna have a final. It's gonna be calculating the incidents, what the edges are, the paths, the first breaths. We're gonna literally do the first breath algorithm. Like as in like we have like a bunch of nodes, and it's gonna be like, okay, find the first breath algorithm of A. What does A connect to? A connects to C. A connects to D. A connects to E. Right? So yeah, there's gonna be stuff like that, and then there's gonna be the I was gonna say deep search. Oh my god. No, there's gonna be the DFS one. I forget what it's called. Do for search, which I guess if there's arrows, it would go. For example, if A could only go to B, B go to C, C go to D, E go to F. That's if you start with A, it'll do that. If you start with B, it'll do that, right? It'll go through B, C, D, E, F, right? And then just do that. That's the whole algorithm, right? That's all I need to do. Because that's all that's gonna be in the exam apparently. But then I figured out the fucking exam day. It's 2 hours and 50 minutes for an exam like that. And clearly, for one of the midterms, they showed off only two midterms. One of their example finals, they only showed off two fucking questions. So, hold on. EFS. Oh, this video. Why do they not have like a fucking PowerPoint? Please. Yeah, zero. So for the deep first search algorithm, zero goes to one. Oh, maybe I got it in reverse. Yeah, zero would go one, two. Then one would go one, three, four, five. Three would go four, five, two. Huh? Oh, that doesn't make sense. That fucking graph doesn't make sense. Okay, let me look at one that makes sense. A goes to BD, yeah. B goes to CF, yeah. C goes to E, and then H, yeah. G, yeah. G goes to E, H, yep. E goes to BF, yes. F, A, T, F, yeah. The point is, I got that. BFS algorithm. I mean, guys, the reason I'm like bothering like, doing this, I wish I could show you all on screen, but I'm just being a fucking lazy sack of shit right now. It's because I'm like concerned because like I'm bad at showing algorithms on paper. I'll admit that. Visited Q is on three. Hmm. Oh, oh, here we go. I don't know. Mm-hmm. BFS is A B C D E F. A D F C E B. Oh, right, right, right. What a shitty example. What a shitty example. Oh my god, dude. Oh my god. It's like two different fucking graphs, and it's like trying to pass it off as if it's the same fucking shit. No, it's not. Okay, we'll get started. Honest to God, I don't know what today's topic is gonna be. I'll probably try to make it a longer stream today. I don't want to do. Technically, I did UFOs, but like the stream is kind of gone. You know. Uh, okay, let's get started. What is it gonna show? I don't even know. Oh yeah, right. Let's watch it.
Win a trip for two to Miami Beach.
Let me change my camera settings. I'm lazy today. Today I don't want any lighting, fluorescent. There we go. That's so much better. Because see, I can just do this and ta-da! Ah, fuck this. Right, I'll be the color of the video today. Unfortunately, I don't think I can go even worse or better. Oh, I can. Now, here's the issue. We'll get to like, we'll get here. See, it's still, eh. See, like, eh. Okay, it works. Okay. See, this is like a story. Oh, let's watch a movie. I really don't want to do story ones today. This would be good. But like again, it borders on story. Um, no, scary. Videos. Scariest videos on the internet, number 9. Hollow Man, Gorilla Visible Scene. Uh huh. Cool. Oh, please, and whoever watches this, do please recommend any videos. Oh, that's why. Fuck. I didn't need the yellow screen. Shit, you see, I'm like yellow. I'm gonna disappear though. Here's video you have never seen. King Frostmare. I'm not too sure. No, there's gonna copyright strike us for sure. Ooh, see, this is a good example of capturing the fucking pickaxe. This is
Ah, Kiev, you've been dreaming of getting here for years. Getting out your trusty camera, you start taking pictures of the cathedral's aviation museum
Anvil
and can be 10 times called morning glory, a very rare bright enough to stain clothes. There were other colors too. Foamy tides to be perfect for this to occur.
Aw. Ooh, interesting. Yeah, see, this is a cool weather phenomena. You can barely catch it though because of how subtle it happens, how fast it is too. Sun what? Sun dogs?
Since when did Earth get
Flying saucer. Oh my god.
they look like they're coming down from the sky? Mammatus clouds.
Oh, right, because it looked like boobs. They're boob clouds. So yeah, if you all have any recommendations, please tell me. Like I said, I have to do a scary stream today. Oh my god. I actually thought this guy was naked. I was like, what the fuck? I don't want to do scary stories today. Do we? Oh my god. You know what? If we're doing scary, yeah, I might as well just do scary stories. Let's get this shit out of the way for this year. Okay. Scary, Mr. Okay, we're just gonna do scary stories today. Fuck it. I'll be doing my homework in the background or some shit like that. I don't know. Mr. Nightmare. Three that. Oh, sorry, Mr. Nightmare, for stealing your content for today. I literally. It's because like I could be playing Fire Emblem today, but like today I need to do my scary stream, and then I need to do another scary stream for May, which I need to plan. Blizzard Horse. Did we watch this? I don't know.
Michaels has bug.
When I was in high school, I had a couple of close friends, Jason and Brian.
Okay,
We did
cool.
quite a bit together.
Whoa,
and when it came
what is
time to
going
graduate,
on?
Jason had to move away to Lexington, South Carolina with his family due to his father's work. After we graduated and he had completed his move with his family, my friend Brian and I were invited to pay a visit for a weekend to his new house. We decided out of boredom to start hiking around in the nearby forest and countryside, which we found had a scenic river. It was a beautiful area and felt quite peaceful, but we ended up getting lost. We decided to keep following the river as we lost track of which direction was upstream or downstream, with no sounds of civilization anywhere we could hear.
Whoa!
We quickly became
what is going
concerned about
on?
finding a
Hold on.
telephone to call Jason's mom or dad to get us from wherever we were, even though there was no paved road or street that we could find nearby. As we kept following the river, we came to this old church-looking building made of really old red bricks with a dirt parking
thought
lot
there was gonna
and
be
a
like,
dirt
"I'm
road
in
leading up to
church
it.
and I saw
It was
the
very
anti-"
encroached with growth and bushes. We decided to go inside and see if there were people, and maybe ask to use their telephone and get the address for this location. We noticed there were a few old cars, which looked to be 70s or 80s, possibly Novas, 4 of them. Very dirty and rusted in this dirt parking lot with flat or missing tires. They were all white colored, or used to be, and parked in a row side by side. As we got closer, we heard gospel music sounds and some singing inside the church. We were relieved that there were people. So we went into the church, which appeared to be rather old and dilapidated. We peeked past the main doors to the hall and saw what I estimated was a couple dozen people dressed as nicely as they could, though they clearly were poor. When we went inside, the old white-haired woman wearing horn-rimmed glasses who was playing the church piano stopped playing, and she looked at us with no expression on her face. What happened next really stuck with me, and I will never forget it as long as I live. Everyone in that church stopped singing and put down their song sheets, and they all slowly turned their heads and looked at us with the most vacant and unwelcoming glares. Jason said, "We're sorry to interrupt. We just want to use your phone to call my folks to come get us." Nobody spoke. It was dead silent in that church other than the wooden pews creaking from the weight of the people in them. So we just slowly backed out of the door and let it close behind us, and looked at each other in ominous fear and quietly left. We started walking up that dirt road, and when Brian mentioned that there were no crosses or anything Christian in there, we looked back up the road to see that maybe a dozen of those people, all men, had walked out in the front of the church and were standing there watching us intently as we walked along the road. This freaked us out, and we began to sprint up that dirt road for what felt like a good half hour. We finally came to a very old, broken down gas station that looked like one of those old full service stations. We went inside to find that the shelves were mostly empty and dusty from a quick glance, and an old, overly tanned, swarthy man with a really oily and dirty baseball cap was behind the counter reading some old book with ragged edges and yellowed pages. He looked up and said, "You boys lost, huh? Just head out that way you came in and make a left, and follow that road till you see a telephone pole, and just go right at the pole down the trail and it'll take you to a highway." We thanked the man and left quickly, and as we walked down the road to the telephone pole the man told us about, again looked back, and the old man was out in front of the gas station with his arms folded, just staring at us with a rotten tooth grin on his face. We got to the pole, made the right, and followed that trail to the nearest highway, after about a good half hour of walking in the twilight. It had just gotten dark as we got to the highway, and we tried to wave down a few people passing by, but nobody stopped. Thankfully, a police officer saw us and pulled over to help us. We told him we were lost and gave him Jason's address, to which he whistled and said we really were lost. It took about 30 minutes for that officer to drive us back to Jason's, and during the chit-chat, he told us we needed to be careful out in those woods, as there are some crazy witch folks in it.
Crazy witch folks? What the fuck? Oh wait, no.
Long time ago,
actually,
I'm
hold
talking
on.
like
I'm
8
probably
years
not gonna
ago,
need this.
two friends and I, James and Sean, did something really stupid. But at the time, doing stupid things was what we
We're
did
doing
to
scary
pass the
stories
time.
Today.
We're not really friends with James anymore, but Sean and I still talk often, and so oftentimes we'll talk with each other about this story. We were 19 years old. We lived in Bumfuck, New Jersey. Lots of vacant houses in our old town. And atop a hilly road not far from our houses was an abandoned church. Locals knew about the church. It was on a closed-off road, and it had been abandoned for many years. I'm not sure if it's still standing or what the current state of it is, as I live in Florida now. But James, Sean, and I, being the troublemaking thrill seekers we were, came up with this genius plan of bringing a Ouija board to the church late one night. This was October, so I guess we were doing it in honor of spooky season. Sean had the Ouija board in his closet, so he brought it. I drove the three of us, so I first picked up James, then Sean, and we just drove straight towards the church. Since the road up the hill to the church was literally blocked off, we had to park on the side of the road and walk from there. We followed the road up the hill to the church, using one flashlight at first, so as not to overdo it and draw any possible attention. But once we were atop the hill, we pretty much all three of us turned on our flashlights. The church was surrounded by woods in basically all directions, and had a gravel parking lot alongside it. The church had been broken into a million times before, and was littered with graffiti, so the big front door was already ajar. Two of us had to work together to pull it open because it scraped on the floor though. Once inside, we naturally just looked around the place with our flashlights to make sure no one else was in there. It was definitely creepy being in that place at night. Sean set up the Ouija board. Then he pulled out these 3 candles from his backpack as well, and he laughed and said it would add to the experience. He placed the 3 candles in a triangle formation around the board, and as they were all lit, we turned off our flashlights. Now the only light in the whole place was from the candles, creating a much more eerie and uncomfortable vibe. We really couldn't see more than maybe 6 feet in all directions. So we began playing with the Ouija board. Sean was doing most of the talking. At this point, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he definitely opened with "Is anybody there?" and the typical cliche Ouija board questions. The planchette started to move and we started to laugh. I knew it was one of them doing it. I feel like it's not possible to play with a Ouija board with your friends without someone jokingly moving around the planchette. We went along with it though, and whoever was moving it spelled out a few words. As this was going on though, we heard a weird crack type sound come from the altar of the church. Best way I could describe it is it sounded like a big piece of wood cracking in half. It was loud and it sounded like it was done by someone. We all jumped in reaction and hurried to shine our phones' flashlights in the direction of the altar. There was no one there as far as we could see. I think both of them were just as freaked out as I was after that. But the place was old and falling apart, so some weird noises here and there didn't seem that crazy, and so we kept going. We all took turns asking the board questions, but the planchette was no longer moving. I think because that crack sound freaked all three of us out and now we were taking it more seriously. This went on for some time, until another sound from the altar area broke the silence again. But before we even had time to shine our lights over there again, something landed on the Ouija board, causing all of us to jump and scream. It was a rock about the size of a golf ball. All three of us just had our hands on the planchette 2 seconds ago, and there was no way any of us could have done that. We all three got up and ran back out of the church screaming, leaving the Ouija board and candles behind. We ran all the way down the hill and back to my car, and fearing we were being chased, we didn't stick around. I drove us all back to James's house, where we just sat in the car for a good half hour talking, wondering what exactly just happened. Sean is very religious and superstitious as well. He was confident we had reached a spirit of some kind. I don't really believe in any of that stuff. I believe there was someone else in the church with us, which I find to be equally terrifying. Sean went back to the church the next day with James to get his Ouija board back. And to make things even stranger, the Ouija board was missing, but the candles were still in place. When they saw it was missing from the entrance, they decided to just leave right away. This remains to be the single scariest experience of my life. This happened in Warren County, Georgia, a very rural inland part of the state. I was with my girlfriend Marissa, and we were driving around checking out the area, seeing if it was somewhere we'd like to live. It was very quiet and spacious, which is what we wanted. We're both Roman Catholic. She likes to go to church a little more than I do, though. It was a weekday in the middle of the day and not much traffic at all. We checked out a bunch of things in the area that would be important to see before deciding on moving to an area. Since Marissa has been an equestrian for most of her life, a big point of us moving to a rural area was for her to have a barn for her horses. After checking out some properties listed for sale, we happened to pass by a small, cute-looking church on the side of this very quiet road with a bunch of cars in the parking lot. This church wasn't far from the last property we just looked at, so Marissa shook my shoulder and said we should see if a mass was going on, see if it's nice. And so I pulled into the little dirt-like parking lot for the building and parked next to some old red minivan. A lot of the cars in the parking lot were on the older side. In fact, I'd say most of them. I mentioned that to Marissa as we got out of the car, and she agreed and said it was probably because it was a lower income area. I opened the door to the church for us and we stepped in, and it was a pretty small inside as we expected. I'd say there were 5 rows of pews, each cut in half in the middle by the nave, or center aisle. There had to be at least 20 people in there, though they were not an older crowd. Usually in every mass, big or small, you'd see a decent amount of seniors, but based on the backs of everyone's heads in there, everyone appeared to be in their 30s to 40s. It seemed everyone was sitting in silence for some kind of prayer. As we sat down in the back, the people closest to us started looking at us, like one at a time, and as others noticed the staring, they would look to see what the others were staring at and then look at us. Marissa and I looked at each other, then nervously looked back at everyone. All we could think to do was smile. But no one smiled back. They were giving us the most unwelcoming stares, and I just realized none of these people were dressed even remotely nicely for a mass. What was going on here? This was when I realized there were no women in here, not a single one besides Marissa, and the stares. They seemed to be staring more at Marissa than me. A man in a mask at the front of this alleged church, by what I guess was supposed to be the altar, then stepped up and pointed at us and said, "Who invited you here?" I took it upon myself to answer for us, and said that we were just passing by and saw that a mass was going on and we wanted to join. The man was clearly not a priest, and this was clearly not a Roman Catholic church. The masked man said, "You need to leave now." By now, every last person in the church was looking at us. I said, "Come on, honey," and we got up and hurried out and ran to the car. We wasted no time sitting in the car. I got us out of that parking lot right away. but we both noticed in the rearview mirror someone from the building getting in their van in the parking lot.
Yeah, today I'm gonna be a
I
little
felt like there was no way they were going to follow us until we saw that gray van catching up to us in the mirror. I had Marissa GPS the Warren County Sheriff's Office, and we drove straight there. The van was behind us the whole time, not on our ass, but close enough that it was obvious. The second we pulled into the public safety parking lot, the van kept driving down the road. When it was gone, we simply drove straight home and never looked at Warren County again. We clearly ended up in some kind of cult meeting, but I don't get why they had someone follow us, nor why they were having their meeting in broad daylight, or why they didn't at least lock the door.
A fucking mess is all I'm saying, man. It's gonna be me just ebb and flowing. Yeah.
When I was a Cub Scout, we would always have our meetings somewhere in a Catholic elementary school, whether it was in the school gym or in one of the adjacent rooms. I was like 8 years old when this happened, and it was disturbing. But before I get into why I'm telling you that, let me start from the beginning. It started a few days earlier when I was at Mass with my mom and my brother like we'd go to every other week.
So let me tell you about a little bit earlier. What?
Usually would be late, so we'd either sit in the back or stand by the doors if there were no seats. Today, we sat all the way in the back corner. My mom and then brother entered the pew first. I sat on the end. At some point during the Mass, I noticed an older man with glasses and a white mustache who was standing against the wall to the left of me looking at me. As I glanced over, he smiled, and I still remember vividly the stupid, creepy face that he made as he was trying to be funny. But I was 8, I wasn't a toddler. It felt weird and uncomfortable. I did my best to look away, but I could see him keep looking over to me every few seconds. I looked back at him, and once again he made another weird face that I assume he was making to try and be funny. It just came off as weird again. My mom noticed it this time and tapped me on the shoulder and whispered to ignore him. I believe she gave him a dirty look as well. The next time I looked in that direction, the man wasn't there anymore. He had walked somewhere else. The next thing I remember from that Mass was going up for communion, and then as I got back to my seat, the man was back in that spot again, and he was staring at me, just smiling the whole time until I got back to my seat. My mom noticed it again, and since we got the communion, we just left. My mom said on the way out she didn't like the way that guy was looking at us, specifically me. Now fast forward to when scouts come into play. Towards the end of our meetings, we'd sometimes have little fun contests or games, and this day in question we were having a scavenger hunt. The items we were supposed to be finding all tied into the theme of scouting. I remember some of the objects on the list being a first aid kit, a rope, a flashlight, things of that nature. We were split into 2 teams, and we all had a copy of the list, and the team to find the most items would win. So we all split up. The play area ranged from the gym to the cafeteria to some of the adjacent rooms. I was running around rooms and tiny hallways I'd never even seen before, looking for any of the items I could find on the list. I wasn't having much luck. Eventually, I found myself in this very narrow hallway in the back section of the cafeteria by the kitchen. In this hallway was one of those ice cream fridges filled with like ice pops. I looked inside the fridge for any of the items, nothing. But then I decided to be sneaky and take one of the ice cream pops. As I did, I heard a man's voice to the right of me. I looked over and saw that man from the church a few days earlier, walking over to me smiling. He said something like, "Don't let them see you taking that." He shut the fridge door and grabbed my hand and told me he had some better treats in the back where the kids aren't allowed. I broke my hand free from his grip and tried to walk away scared, and he grabbed my wrist this time, tightly. I turned to him and he went, "Shh, calm down." I yelled help, and he let go of me and said, "Stop it." I ran back to the gym and told the Cub Master what happened. Thankfully, my Cub Master was an actually nice, caring man, probably because he was a father himself, and he told my mom about it. I told my mom it was that same man from the church, and my Cub Master would help my mom in reporting that man to the church. It turned out that that man worked for the church. I'm not sure what exactly he did, but he lived on the church grounds, which explained why he was there. What makes me sick, though, is that allegations came out against that man from an altar boy's parents, claiming he touched him inappropriately. The disgusting thing is, I can imagine what he was planning on attempting to do if I actually followed him to wherever he was trying to take me. I don't know if that man went to prison or what, but I know the church cut ties with him after this.
Why in prison? Yeah, get him in prison. I mean, I don't know. No, I watched the Hidden Room one. It was pretty good. Just saying, if you all want to watch that one, watch that one.
Back before my girlfriend Jenny and I officially started dating, we would still hang out all the time. We both
I know what
snowboard,
that face
and her
is.
family has a little cabin-type house in Vermont, not far from Stowe
can y'all
Mountain
hear it?
Resort.
Yeah.
This was around
yeah,
our
y'all can
maybe
hear it.
10th time hanging out.
Like I said,
She
today's
invited
gonna
me
be,
to go
like,
up there
little
for a
more,
weekend with her to go snowboarding for the
right?
first time together. It was like a 5-hour drive. As we neared her little house, we spent about half an hour on this very windy, secluded road on which we'd pass occasional driveways that would lead up into properties blocked off by walls of trees. We were way up there in the mountains. The sight of other cars by this point was something to behold. It really felt like we were alone up there. A lot of the driveways didn't even have tire marks in the snow, meaning even a lot of the houses were void of people. Jenny told me that's because a lot of the houses here were owned by people out of state, just like her situation. I was going like 30 when she yelled at me to slow down, it's coming up. So I hit the brakes, and this little opening in the trees that I otherwise would have missed came up. We drove this narrow trail in 4-wheel drive, which led to this small house covered in snow. It looked incredibly cozy. We parked, and first thing we did was turn the heat on in the little house. We unloaded our stuff inside, and since it was already getting dark that night, we just cooked some of the food we packed for dinner and watched a movie. Pursuit of Happiness, actually. So the house had just about everything. Heat, electricity, except running water. Her family had jugs and jugs of water for important things like washing hands and plates and stuff. But there was no working toilet, so she told me we had to use the outhouse outside. I only had to go pee that night, so I just went out to the front deck and peed into the snow.
It's like, you know what, like you
It
do
was
the
also
synonym
snowing out
challenge.
that night.
Synonym.
We fell asleep at some point during the second movie
And,
we
like,
watched,
you fucking
and we
cough,
woke up
that's
pretty
what, like,
early
you
to our
thought
phone
right now.
alarms. We wanted the freshies on the mountain. We started getting ready to drive up to the ski resort. After breakfast, I had to go out to the outhouse though. I ran out to the outhouse in my shoes, and my feet started to freeze. On my way to the outhouse though, I saw footprints in the snow. They were kind of big, but I couldn't tell if they were boot marks or animal prints. I followed the trail, and it actually wrapped around the house and then went into the woods. I called Jenny outside, and she came to look and said it was probably a black bear since they're everywhere up here. So I went, did my business, and we set off to the ski resort, where we had a good 8-hour run. Afterwards, we stopped at a diner to eat, and then went back to the house. By this point, it was pitch black outside and snowing again. We set up a fire and got the heat on full blast and started blasting some music. We started to drink, and eventually I had to break the seal and pee. But also, if I was throwing my boots on anyway, I figured I'd do all my business in the outhouse. I ran out into the snowstorm and to the outhouse once more. This time I slammed the door shut to prevent snow and cold air blowing in my face. I heard the blasting music from inside the house still, but then over that, I heard the crunching sound of footsteps in the snow, passing the outhouse. "Jenny?" I yelled. No answer. The footsteps just walked away. I brought my phone with me, so I just texted her, "Are you outside?" It didn't immediately deliver though, because my cell reception sucked up there. A few minutes passed and I was still in the outhouse. I was just about to finish when the blasting music suddenly stopped. It was just pure silence, minus the sound of snowflakes hitting the ground outside. As soon as I stepped out of the outhouse, I realized it was pitch black out here now. The lights from the house were off. I figured maybe the power went out. I used my phone's flashlight and noticed a fresh pair of footsteps in the snow leading to the house. I followed the footsteps to the front door, where they seemed to stop, then continue around the house. I banged on the door and yelled Jenny's name. Suddenly the door opened and an arm pulled me inside the house. It was Jenny. She slammed the door shut and locked it. She whispered that there was a man who tried to open the door, which she locked as soon as I went to the outhouse because she was scared being alone. When she saw the person at the door wasn't me, she cut the power and hid in a corner in the living room and watched in horror as a stranger walked past the living room window slowly, looking inside. I came to the door only a couple minutes after this happened. Jenny told me about the secret cellar in the floor that her dad kept a couple rifles and shotgun in. Navigating in the dark, I found the handle to it and lifted it open. Now using my flashlight, I climbed down the little ladder and grabbed one of the guns off the wall. We then waited on the couch in the dark, afraid to turn the lights back on, exposing ourselves to whoever was out there.
That was in a song?
The closest neighbors were not a short walk. Jenny said it wouldn't have been any of them, and odds are they weren't even in Vermont right now.
What the fuck is that?
Once again, the only sound was the sound of snowflakes hitting the ground outside, until the sickening sound...
It's like... What song am I? Oh, wait, why am I gonna close this out? You know, I hate. Okay. Is something wrong? I hate having this thing open on my desk. So whenever I'm talking, I like to close it. But the thing is, when I open it, I type in my password. So I should just be like moving this somewhere else, right? You fall down, you're probably not gonna break. What song has that? And not. Order of the Tempest. And not this one, right? Not this good. Songs that kind of have like the percussion and the lower sounds. I can totally do that. That's the whole point, right? But when I have like weird fucking like
sound of footsteps in the snow outside returned. We weren't even in the dark, afraid to turn the lights back on, exposing ourselves to whoever was out there. The closest neighbors were not a short walk. I came to the door, walked past the living room window slowly, looking inside. I came to the door only a couple minutes after this happened. Jenny told me about the secret cellar in the floor that her dad kept a couple rifles and shotgun in. Navigating in the dark, I found the handle to it and lifted it open. Now using my flashlight, I climbed down the little ladder and grabbed one of the guns off the wall. We then waited on the couch in the dark, afraid to turn the lights back on, exposing ourselves to whoever was out there. The closest neighbors were not a short walk. Jenny said it wouldn't have been any of them, and odds are they weren't even in Vermont right now. Once again, the only sound was the sound of snowflakes hitting the ground outside, until the sickening sound of footsteps in the snow outside returned. I took the loaded gun and marched to the front door, opened it, and shot like 3 rounds into the air, screaming. The footstep sounds were gone. I'd imagine they ran off, and the sound of the shots echoing into the air masked the sound of the footsteps running away. We left the next morning under the recommendation of her father, who said it's best to not be there at the moment. They don't really have anything they're worried about being stolen, so we just got the hell out of there the next day. At least we got our full day of snowboarding in. That horrific night was definitely an experience, to say the least. I live in England, and for others who live here, you may remember it snowed quite a lot in the winter of 2018. I used to love the snow, but after what happened, I'm no longer a fan of it. My immediate family was going to visit extended family in Cornwall for the weekend. I didn't want to go. I don't get along with them very well, and would much rather have stayed at home, so I faked an illness. I wasn't expecting it to work, but it did. They went without me and left me in charge of the house, which I was fine with. For the record, I was 16, so it's not like they were being irresponsible. Saturday was great. I went on my computer, watched Netflix, and played in the snow with my dog for a bit. She loves the snow more than anything. That evening, I was just finishing up a mission on Call of Duty World War II, when I started to get hungry. The house is full of food, but mostly food that takes a lot of effort to prepare. I decided to go to the fish and chip shop in the village. By now it was getting dark outside and the snow had stopped falling, but it had gotten really deep. I grabbed a tenner and crammed it into my pocket before pulling on a coat and heading outside. The route I take involves going down a tree-lined snicket that has a few street lamps for light before coming out near the main road where the chippy is. By the time I got there, it was dark out. I got some chips, battered sausage, and started to head back home. I was halfway down the snicket clutching my meal when I heard it. In the trees just to my right, a twig snapped. My head whipped around, but I couldn't see anything. My heart was racing, but I tried to convince myself it was just an animal. Until I heard it again. 2 snaps in rapid succession. Now I was scared. I began to walk home fast, and I forgot about what was coming up. The last section of the snicket, which was almost pitch black. The bulb in the street lamp had blown months ago, and the council couldn't be bothered to fix it. I sighed with frustration and worry, and carried on walking before I heard it. The continuous sound of twigs breaking stopped for a moment, before being replaced by crunching. I stopped and turned around, and my heart stopped. I could see a black figure silhouetted by the lamp further down the snicket, a black figure who was running straight at me. I turned around and full-on sprinted through the snow. I burst out of the snicket and ran to my house, which was only about 10 meters away. I got my keys out as I was running, and I jammed them into the lock as soon as I was close enough. I threw myself into the house and slammed the door shut behind me, locking it. I looked out of the door window and saw nothing. The streets were deserted. It wouldn't be that bad if it ended there, but it didn't. Paranoia kept me up late. Close to midnight, the dog started making a racket, barking and scratching at the back door. I knew deep down what she was barking at, but I didn't want to believe it. I went to the back door, but it was too dark to see anything. I steeled my nerves and flicked the light switch to once again see nothing. The back garden was empty. I dragged the dog away from the door and went back to watching TV, but something was nagging me. I couldn't think what it was. The back garden was undisturbed apart from my footsteps leading up to the back door from when I came home. That's when it hit me. I came in the front door. My veins turned to ice.
Oh my god, dude, the fucking audio is so loud for you all.
Very wrong.
There we go, it's supposed to be low.
On my face. I walked around to it and stopped dead. It was wide open. The build of my house gives 3 different options when you enter the house.
We'll do
The
this.
living room, where I was, kitchen, or stairs. As I slowly backed into the wall, I heard a light but clear thump
We'll
upstairs.
do 24.
With that, I grabbed the
There we
dog,
go.
grabbed my phone, and
It's
ran
just
straight to the
slightly
room.
lower
Due to
than
it
my
being midnight,
voice.
I rang the bell about 10
Probably.
times before getting a response. They were furious about being woken, but when I told them what was going on, they let me straight in. The police took about 40 minutes to arrive because of the snow that was once again falling heavily. And when they did come,
Look
they
at
did
my-
a thorough
look at my
search of the
hairline.
house. They found nothing.
Pretty
The footsteps were
good.
all filled in by the snow, but the CCTV showed a figure running straight out of the back door soon after I left, hopping the fence at the end. They disappeared into the woods behind my house.
Yes,
It kills me to know he's
yes.
still out there, and that he knows where I live.
Uh-huh.
I'm sleeping more steadily now, and we have a new lock on the door. And for a
Hell
while,
yeah.
I was constantly worried for
God,
my
that's
family's safety.
insane. Knowing that, like, this guy could just come back any moment. God damn. Can I, like, not select, like,
I'm
multiple
27
fucking
years
fi-
old.
Oh my god.
This
it
happened when I
opens.
was 26. My mom passed away a few years ago. My dad is blind. My dad sold a very successful energy company when I was young, though, so we have money and multiple properties which we rent out. Obviously, I have to do my part in helping out given the circumstances. I help manage most of the properties. My dad lives in his 1-story condo about 10 minutes away from us. The condo is walking distance to the village, which has grocery stores and anything he could need. My sister Katie and I live in the house that we all used to live in together as a family. Our dad gets by himself with basic things like shopping and taking care of himself, but we have to bring him to further away things like doctor visits and whatever he can't walk to. This happened during a winter storm. Katie was at her boyfriend's house half an hour away from home, so I was home alone. The snow was coming down heavily, and I thought to call my dad and check in on him. He has a landline phone because that's easier for him to use rather than a smartphone. He does have a smartphone, but he's stubborn about using it sometimes. When I called, it rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. So I called again, and the same thing happened. Normally he would rush to the phone to call back whenever we call, so I waited a few minutes before calling one more time when I saw he wasn't calling back. He once again went to voicemail. I left a message asking him to call me back. I called Katie asking if Dad said anything about going out in this weather, and when she said no, he didn't, that's when I got worried. I didn't like the idea of him being out, so I drove over to his condo. The roads were so bad that there were hardly any cars on the road. My phone kept vibrating, giving a winter storm advisory warning.
That sucks.
These were no conditions for my dad to be out walking around in.
Right.
As I pulled up to his condo, I did notice footsteps in the snow going both ways, indicating he must have gone out and just gotten home. I knocked on the front door and yelled, "Dad, it's me." And a few seconds later, the neighbor's wife, an elderly woman named Hannah Laura, opened her door and said hello with a smile, telling me her husband just gave my dad a lift to the store a few minutes ago. We talked for a minute, then I thanked her as she closed her door. I figured I might as well let myself into my dad's condo to wait since I was already here. Naturally, before looking for my key, I tried twisting the doorknob, and to my disappointment, it opened the door. My dad didn't lock the door again. I told him so many times to stop doing this because one day someone would break in, even if we live in a nice area. I shut the door behind me, but then I noticed something peculiar. There were melted snow tracks on the wood floor, leading past the living room to the little hallway that leads to my dad's room. Dad,
Oh, God.
did he get home just before I got here? But that wouldn't have explained Hannah Laura's husband not having returned yet. Well, maybe it could have. Maybe he dropped my dad off and then ran his own errands. These were the thoughts I was having as I was slowly following the tracks. I called Dad one more time, this time louder. I didn't hear the shower running, so why wouldn't he be able to hear me? Something wasn't right. He would have answered. I started calling my dad's cell number, and I heard it in the bedroom down the hall. Maybe he was home. I went down the hall into my dad's empty room. He wasn't there. I saw his phone vibrating on the nightstand next to his bed. I looked at the ground and saw the melted snow tracks lead to his bathroom and his room. The door was closed. I went over to knock on it and said, "Dad?" one final time. No response. I slowly opened the door, and the bathroom was empty. But there was something unusual I noticed right away, and that was the shower curtain. It was pulled shut. My dad always
Yeah,
left
it's
the
like,
shower
why would
curtain
you?
pulled open.
I don't know.
This for
I
a
would
fact.
never fucking
On top of
shut
this,
my
the door being shut
fucking.
was also unusual.
I cannot
It
speak to
leads all
that.
the
I
way
would
to
never
the
shut
front,
my
making
shower curtains.
navigating easier
I don't know
for
why
himself.
did it add fucking.
I looked at the shower curtain for a moment, then closed the door, walked to the front of the condo, shut the door, and called 911. I waited in the front of the
Oh,
condo,
no.
the only entrance and exit. Police showed up surprisingly quickly given the conditions. We went back inside of the condo together and right into my dad's room, where we saw a man sitting on the bed with his hands in the air, as if he knew we were coming and he waited there. My dad got home about 10 minutes after this, in time to hear everything that happened. The man who broke in lived a few units down according to his ID. That meant this man had been keeping an eye on my dad and his place for a while, with plans to break in and rob him. I think I learned where the saying "rob him blind" came from after this. My dad, being the kind soul he is, didn't want to press charges, but we persuaded him to hire a lawyer. The man was charged with third-degree burglary, and he's still in jail to this day.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, it's sad. Why would you? Hold up. Did I get the last story right? Because like right now I'm like skimming through all the details. Was the dad like blind? Is that why he made that last joke? Because like if so, like why did people just take advantage of you know those who cannot fend for themselves? You know what I mean? Or like the disadvantage. It just sucks. It's so fucking unfortunate. Yeah, next up are 3 characters. Actually, did I watch the cemetery one? I don't remember.
Now,
It's from a month ago. I don't think I did. Add a new content, cool. Well, it's just and then the supermarket one. Again, today's scuffed. Today's scuffed.
I'm a cemetery operations coordinator, or you can just call me a cemetery manager. Part of my job is sitting down with guests and family members of the deceased to set up funerals, facilitate the sales of plots, etc. A 30-something-year-old man named Antonio, very spiritual man, once sat down with me to purchase a plot for his sick father who was in hospice care. Antonio was a Hispanic man with a very thick accent, and I saw in his eyes he was a very caring man. He showed me pictures of his father, who also looked like a very sweet man, much too young to be taken away from his family. But unfortunately, the man's time came that same week, and Antonio arranged for his father's funeral service at the cemetery. It was a very stormy day, the day of the funeral, which is thought to be a sign of good luck. The funeral procession stopped in front of the front office building briefly.
Actually, there is
outside.
something similar. What I mentioned, from what I've heard, my dad says like, whenever whenever the dead die, and it rains, it's a really good sign that like they're going to heaven or something like that. And what was in the same? And my aunt likes to add that when my grandmother passed away, like essentially she had lice. not like she had lice like then. What I mean is like she found lice on her head out of nowhere, which is also apparently like a good luck sign. It's very interesting. I don't know why she added that though.
Under the front awning of the building and saw
The getting lice is not
hearse. We waved
common
at each other.
when you're an adult, I'm pretty
Due
sure.
to the weather, I went back inside until the procession was ready to proceed to the burial site. I got in one of the cemetery pickup trucks and followed the procession to the final stop, where I would stand with my umbrella supervising, as part of my job is making sure funeral services go smoothly. After the funeral, I did some laps around the place in the truck just to survey the area, as I did at least a couple times a day. I had a lot of paperwork to take care of, and on top of this, I had to close the cemetery that night. So a little later, I went back to my desk and took care of this. The cemetery closes at 5:30, so as soon as it started to get dark, I drove around the place one more time to ensure all visitors had left, then drove over to the front gate to shut it. It was a relatively warm early March. The days were still on the shorter side, so by closing time on a normal day, it would already be getting darker. But on this
interesting image.
day, it already felt like it was nighttime. I was driving back to my office when I thought I saw someone hurriedly walking down one of the lanes of tombstones before turning behind a hedge and disappearing out of sight. I beeped my horn so as to let them know the place was closed, but strangely enough, I didn't see them again. I grabbed my umbrella and ran out into the rain in that direction. I turned beyond the hedge he turned at and looked down this long row of tombstones on one side and hedges on the other. I didn't see anyone. I looked around in the rain for a solid 20 minutes, but eventually I had to give up. I drove back up to the office and browsed through the CCTV footage. None of it picked up on any unusual movement, even though it was a bit harder to see much because of the storm and it was also pitch black outside now. I tried to multitask, keeping an eye on the camera while finishing up some of my paperwork, when I heard the front door to the visitation room slam shut. I sprang up from my chair and yelled, "Hello?" My first thought was that it was the same person I saw before. Maybe they got locked in the cemetery and were looking for assistance in leaving. I stepped out into the lobby, but no one was there. I looked around and again said, "Hello?" Maybe the door slamming shut was them leaving. I started looking out all the windows, and I stopped when at one of them, I saw someone on the other side, looking back at me, with a blank expression. I jumped back and screamed, and they didn't flinch. I stepped closer and made a squinty-eyed, confused look when I realized I recognized this Hispanic, older-looking man. In my head, it reminded me exactly of the pictures of Antonio's father he showed me. With my heart in my throat, I ran out the front door of the building and to the side where I saw the man, but he was gone. He wasn't booking it into the fields, he wasn't hiding in a bush nearby, he was gone. I looked around me as I stood in the rain getting soaked, then ran back inside, packed up my things, locked up, and got in my car. I opened and closed the gate, once more locking it behind me, and drove home. When my wife asked me at home why I was being so quiet, I just told her, long day at work. To this day, I think I was just overworking myself, and my mind was playing tricks on me, but it still is genuinely disturbing to think about. My name is Jeremy. This was in the dead of October, chilly and windy. I live in a somewhat big town. It's very poor and old, early 18th century type buildings. A friend and I were bored one night and decided to go fuck around at 3 a.m. I know that going out at 3 a.m. in a poor town isn't exactly smart, but we like to have our fun. We got bored of driving around blasting our music.
Yes.
We're both very big metalheads.
I'm just
At
gonna be
that
like,
point, we had our own
yeah,
band, So we decided it would be interesting and cool to walk around a cemetery in the town. Behind the old town square, there's a massive cemetery. It's divided by two sides of a highway, both sides taking up about 20 acres of land. As I said, it's massive.
You're
Decided to check out the
fucking
older part
kidding
of the
me? Oh my
cemetery.
god.
This part is completely separated from the rest of the newer cemetery with an old iron fence and gate. We get to walking around and checking out the cemetery, trying to read the old moss-covered graves, taking pictures, being a little bit disrespectful, I know. But these were graves from at least a century ago, so there was no one living that would be upset by it. I'm sure the people in the graves didn't mind too much. After about an hour of checking it out, we sit down next to a giant pecan tree in the middle of the old cemetery. That's when we hear this little girl laughing.
I don't know why I'm doing that.
I mean, it was really close to us.
Well, yeah, if I can get the
assumed
connections
maybe
off.
it was a toy left on a child's grave or something like that. I'm not one to scare easily, so I just figured it's motion activated or something like that. We are not at all easy to scare, so we both sort of laugh, pointing out that it's creepy and just keep talking and enjoying the ambiance. Then, as in all stories like this, I get the feeling of something or someone watching me. Once again, I just figured that I was letting the entire thing get into my head. Then my friend says he thinks he sees someone in the shadows of a small wooded area right next to the cemetery, of which we were really close. At this point, we're both a little creeped out and decide to get up and leave. And that noise, the exact same noise, played again, and we hear leaves crunching underneath the feet of someone. That's when we booked it. We ran down the hill leading to the old part of the cemetery, down where my car was parked. I've never ran that fast in my life. It sounded like that laughing noise was following us at that point. We both sort of just went into full fight or flight mode at that point, going as fast as we could without thinking. The noises behind us stopped as we got to my car. I started my car and put it in drive, pulling out into the highway without looking. Luckily, no one hit us. We get down the road to the only gas station that's open at this time of night to check in the back of my car. We had both been discussing how we were scared some shit had been done to it. We get around to check, and immediately, the back door is open. I know for a fact neither of us ever opened it. There was no reason for us to open it. I look in the back seats, make sure nothing's there, get right back in the car, and peel out. I'm still confused about what happened that night. I'm not sure if we both overreacted or what. All I know is that I still feel that weird feeling that something is behind you whenever I tell this story.
Story 3 by Eric Wainwright. Oh, excuse me, Wainwright.
When I was 19, my friend Sean, who was a big goofball, came over to chill in our
A
basement.
big
as we often would
goofball.
during the summer. I remember he had a Coke bottle in his hand, and I
A
was eating
Coke
Wendy's
bottle?
when he said we should check out that creepy little cemetery across town. It was
Uh-huh.
the most random idea ever, and I even told him that. Still, we had no
Okay.
school the next day, and I knew exactly which cemetery he was talking about. I don't know if one should even call it a regular cemetery. It's just a small plot of land with maybe 100 tombstones at most. The tombstone's very archaic looking, and any time we'd pass, there would be no signs of anyone having come to visit within the last decade. The site probably dated back centuries, and it had this super creepy vibe to it because it was closed off by a gothic metal fence, and it was surrounded by woods on two sides, the road on one, and some old abandoned building on the other. Everything about it just gave scary vibes. It took a little persuading, but Sean managed to get me to want to check it out too. Ironically, it was a very cloudy, wettish kind of day, I guess conveniently adding to the mood. Sean pulled up his Honda to the side of the road. I told him to pull up more so it wasn't obvious. This was a low traffic road, so it would look kind of suspicious. He pulled up a few hundred feet down the road, and we got out and cut through the woods so that any potential passing traffic wouldn't see us entering the little cemetery. Hopping the fence in the woods was easy. It was maybe a 3 or 4 foot fence. Sean kind of took the lead on this since it was mainly his venture. He led us through the eerie little plot of land, and we looked at the archaic tombstones. They all seemed to be from the 19th century. The writing on some of them was illegible at that point. I know it sounds super dumb and cliche, but I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched constantly. I started looking around the surrounding woods. I told Sean how creepy this was. I know, he replied. Still, with the feeling of being watched, I looked at the abandoned building next to the cemetery, at one of the windows. For a brief moment, I knew I saw someone standing at the window, even through the fog, smudge, and dirt on the glass, but they casually either ducked or walked away from the window. I told Sean we were being watched by someone in that building, and he turned to look at it as well. Then he went to look for the entrance to it. I told him don't. I said we should just leave before we get in trouble. I stayed
You
still
continue
on the
this off.
tombstone he was
It's because
looking
I
at as we
can
walked around
fucking
the
check it,
building.
but you know what? I'm like
Then
this
he
far
found
in.
a way in.
I'm like,
He called me over.
I'm
but
just
I
cranky
stayed
right
put.
now. Sorry about that.
Then I heard some loud.
It's gonna be a really
crack.
whack, scary stream.
So I looked in that direction, and there was this older man, probably around 55. Gray hair.
Why
had
is
on
he
a
so
black
quiet? I know he said he's
was
reusing
wearing
some of these
jeans,
stories.
And he had a mustache, but that's all I really got of him.
Hmm.
Then he opened his mouth and screamed. Not just yelled, he screamed, "Get
Uh-huh.
out!" He
Get
screamed
out!
So loud,
Get
I
out
could
now!
fly away from being startled. And just like that, I started to feel lightheaded, and suddenly everything went dark. The next thing I remember was waking up to being dragged in the woods. I freaked out, thinking I was being kidnapped. But when I turned and got up, I saw it was just Sean. Sean was freaking out about something. He told me to follow him and run back to the car, so I didn't ask questions. As we ran through the woods, I heard something close behind me, and when I turned, I realized we were being followed by someone, so I ran even faster. We got to his Honda, and he basically put it in drive before the car even had a chance to fully start. When Sean was inside,
Yo,
the
y'all
abandoned
saw my
building,
neck,
he
my
found
neck
a
muscle,
sigil
dude,
of
my cheek
Baphomet
muscle.
painted on the wood floor, which is basically the sign of Satan. Around it were a bunch of freaky dolls with buttons for eyes. You didn't get to see.
Okay,
the
yeah, this is
inside
a
of the building.
way
You
older
heard the old
fucking
man
episode.
screaming
No
outside.
way.
He came running to find me passed out on the floor, and he saw the old man slowly walking over to me. He started to drag me away from the old man and into the woods. He actually literally picked me up and threw me over the fence to get me out.
Oh my god.
I quickly came back to consciousness, and that's when we ran. I had only fainted one time in my life.
That was then.
That moment. I don't know why I
Cliche.
fainted, but it happening at a graveyard with some kind of satanic ritual building right next to it makes it that much stranger.
That is strange. But like, there's no concreteness, unfortunately. Anonymous. Oh yeah, but anonymous.
My grandpa passed away a few years ago. I was always very close with him. This past July on his birthday.
That actually is
we
really
made a visit
sad.
at the
Sorry.
cemetery.
I'm just being immature right now.
The cemetery he and my grandma chose to be buried at.
Oh, I have to grab myself right now. Hold up.
My family lived closer, so they all went to his grave together. I had to go separately.
That
It
sucks.
was a rainy, depressing day, and there's nothing worse than visiting a cemetery on a gloomy day.
But like, y'all notice how it's very interesting that like people have that perspective that like when it rains, it's
It's a pretty big
gloomy.
cemetery. and
Or
I've
like
only been
certain
there a couple
cultures,
other times.
like kind of like
Not as the
requisite
driver,
that
though,
it
so I had a hard
rains
time finding
for
it.
it to be a good funeral.
I didn't see many other people, if any, at the cemetery that day. I'm sure the weather had something to do with it.
Pretty interesting in
Eventually,
my
I found
opinion.
his stone and parked my car.
Oh
in
my
the
god, he
grass
used to
to the
use his
side.
music a lot.
I put some flowers
But I
down
think
my
this is the music
gravestone,
he's replacing
stood there
or
for a while
replaced.
with my eyes closed and prayed. When I finished my prayer, I opened my eyes and looked up. There was an old man standing about 5 rows of graves down, but directly across from me.
Ooh, you all saw the
He
old
was
man?
looking right at me. I knew this man, though. It was my grandfather. But no, it couldn't be. I rubbed my eyes, and he was gone.
Yeah, when somebody
Some
dies, a
spiritual
lot of these
moment,
deaths tend to be
or were my
traumatic.
eyes and mine playing tricks on me.
And yeah, that tends to happen a
Either way,
lot.
I got the chills and I had
Unfortunate.
goosebumps. I was quite honestly freaked out. I got back in my car, said, "Love you, Grandpa," and drove
Okay.
off.
When my mom's mom passed
Like I
away,
had
so
a
my
headache on my way home.
grandmother, for sure, I know my mom was on edge. And like the weirdest event was like when my mom apparently saw something like a wisping shadow, and she said, "Oh my god, it's my mom! It's my mom!" And my dad apparently saw it too, but I didn't. All I saw was this weird like brown mass. It was like a small little brown mouse. It could have been like a butterfly for all I know, or like a moth, or some other insect, right? And like my mom kept on saying it was like my grandma or something. It was so weird. But yeah, like I said, it's painful. It's
It
painful.
was the only car.
And who am I to say like no? It was
Quiet road with dense forest on either
Yeah, I'd
side.
rather just keep it
Commonly,
like that,
there
right?
would be deer crossing here. As my car zipped down the road, I spotted someone on the side of the road coming up, which was odd. There were no sidewalks or a walking path on this road. I slowed down. And it couldn't be. It looked like my grandpa again. When I realized this,
Oh my
my
God,
heart
I feel
dropped 1,000 feet. I swerved the car accidentally. I desperately tried to regain control and come to a stop. Luckily, my car didn't end up in a tree. Rather, just skidded out in the middle of the road until coming to a halt. I immediately looked back to where I saw him. I saw a deer on the side of the road, looking at my car.
Yeah.
My heart was literally racing. I was terrified. I was not well, and I needed to get home. I made sure no cars were coming and got back in my lane. I focused on the road as best I could, given what I had just seen.
I pulled my
twice.
muscle right here.
I felt weird the rest of the day. Not sick, but something wasn't right with my head. I went to bed.
Oh my
early after
God.
watching an episode of my show.
Let me
Woke
tell
up at
you
like
all.
2 in the morning to my phone ringing.
I thought I was
Someone
going
was on.
crazy in the
My
morning.
heart started racing again.
They sent this
Any call
blurry
from someone couldn't
ass,
be good news.
like,
I accepted the call and put the phone up to my ear. There was static on the other end. Finally, I said, "Hello?" More static. But what I thought I heard next, I couldn't believe. Just
it was like a
briefly for maybe
blurry,
half a
like,
second,
canvas signal I
I thought
got
heard
from,
my
like,
grandpa's voice over the static.
class. Because, like, these when you send an email, the canvas email appears in the bottom. And, like, I
Tried to
swear
say
to
hello,
God, it almost felt like it was
some shock.
overlaid on this stuff.
Every part
Like,
of my body was actually
you know how when you
shaking.
look at a screen, everything seems like it's right
All
next to each
types of
other, like
sounds
pixel-wise?
ended.
Like, the pixel isn't, like, deeper in
Called my
or
phone provider the next day to
upper or
change the
something.
number.
It's like when you see, like, the
Couldn't.
pixels, they're, like, right
They
next to
didn't
each
have
other,
any
right?
data to
They're
trace
not
it,
like,
apparently.
kind of like the
I don't
3DS,
know
what
if
it
that was
does
just
is, like,
bullshit or
it
not.
makes, like, the pixels kind of look
The
like,
events that took place that
they're, like,
day
behind
are the
certain
scariest
pixels.
I've ever
The point is, this
experienced.
canvas logo looks like it was,
I
like,
think my dead grandpa was
popping
trying to
up
contact me,
onto,
I
like,
don't
the
know,
actual, like,
because that
glass
sounds
screen,
ridiculous.
in contrast to the background, which was
You'd think
just
if
in
you
back,
experienced
in
something
the
like this,
email.
you'd be
And I was like,
so
what the fuck
full of
is going on?
emotion
And
and
it was just, like, how
joy.
blurry it was that it
Still
looks like it was in
terrifies
3D.
me, and I really still don't know what to think or how to feel about it. Whether it sounds ridiculous or not, this
Actually,
happened, and I wonder almost every
let
other
me
night,
do
was that
this.
really my grandpa on the phone?
Ooh. Interesting. Oh my god, I still have the Shrek one. Can I not copy this image?
My friends and I were very stupid when we were teenagers. I was like 17 or 18 when this happened. It was the month of October. I wanted to do something scary in the spirit of Halloween. There's a small cemetery about 10 minutes from where I live, and when I was drunk with a couple friends, I said we should sneak into it. I'll make up some names for my friends, Ryan and Mike.
Sorry
We
about
were
that.
at
It's just.
Ryan's
Oh,
house,
yeah,
didn't
there we go.
drink ever. So when I came up with the idea, he was the one to drive us to the cemetery. Mike and I were really the ones leading this.
Here, let me show
Ryan
you
was just
what I'm
along for the
talking
ride.
about.
But then again, he hadn't been drinking.
It may or may not
Ryan
actually
parked in
pop
some
up
parking lot
for you
across the
guys,
street.
or like
It
it's
was a
probably
ghost
like a
town
me
because it
thing.
was
I'm
past
probably
midnight
going
at that
insane.
point. We made sure no one was around to see us as we hopped the fence into the cemetery.
This is the symbol.
It
This is
wasn't
the
exactly
canvas
pitch
logo
black
there.
out,
Oh,
but it was
fuck.
slightly hard to see more than 10 feet in front of us. So we were all using our iPhone flashlights. There didn't appear to be any night security.
It was
in the
this
cemetery,
so blurry.
so we
Y'all see
kind
how
of
pixelated it
dispersed from
is?
each other.
But like,
Ryan
let
seemed
me
to be
keep it over
following Mike more
here.
closely. I could still see where they were because of their flashlights. I went off a little further on my
Like,
own.
see there, it
I
kind of looks
decided
like it
I'd
may
start
be part of
taking
the
a quick
video. Here, it looks like
When
it's
I
kind of
started
popping out.
recording with the
I don't
lights
know.
still on, of course.
Not on my TV though.
I recorded a bunch
It's
of
so
old
weird.
house
It's something
films,
about
the
it that
general
just makes it
eerie
look
vibe
kind of
of
like
the cemetery at night. I
weird.
didn't see Mike and Ryan anymore, so I started to go look for them, still recording. I looked at my phone screen and froze. There was a woman dressed in a white gown or dress, I want to say.
What's
with
this?
long,
Y'all saw
gray-looking
that?
hair.
Oh my god. Oh
She was
my
looking down
god.
at the ground. I looked up from my phone screen to look at her in person, but she
Hey,
was
excuse
gone.
me. Oh my
I started to
god.
back away.
Oh
I
my
looked
god.
back at my phone screen, and there there she was again.
Mm-hmm.
Only now she was looking into the camera, or rather looking at me. I looked up from the phone again and could not see her once more, so I looked back down at the screen again, and there I could see her moving closer to me. I started to scream for Mike and Ryan as I sprinted away from that spot.
What is it called?
I couldn't see their lights anywhere, and they weren't answering my screams. I had a feeling they were going to try to scare me, so I ran back for the fence of the cemetery to hop it and get out. I made it to Ryan's car and texted the two of them saying they need to get out of the cemetery now.
Is it this
They
one?
met me at the car minutes later. We all sat in the car, and I showed them the video I took. They had the same horrified looks on their faces I did. Now that I was actually watching the whole video, I could see the moment the woman slowly lifted her head from looking at the ground to looking at me, and then she starts to move towards me. We could only see her moving for like a second or two before I start screaming in the video and running away. But the way she was moving, we could see no leg movement. It almost seemed as though she were floating to me. I have that video saved on my old iPhone 4S.
Ooh, send it
The stupid
over.
thing won't turn on. It gets stuck at the Apple logo.
Oh.
I don't want to reset that phone until I can get that video off of it somehow. My friends firmly believe the woman in the video was a real, living person who also happened to be in the cemetery that night.
Right?
Me,
That
I
would make
didn't
more
want to actually
sense.
Find her, and only being able to see her on my phone screen. Well, let's just say I was never a believer in the paranormal until that night.
Okay. Fuck, I have it saved here then. Cool. So now the supermarket stories. It's probably gonna happen for creepy people, at least be
I'm a
called
mother
out.
of 3, and so our grocery bills are quite high. My husband works at a tech company.
Guys, my horror story is that my eggs cost me $18. Dude, fuck that. That's actually, that's how much, like, this is an actual fucking thing. $18 a fucking dozen. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Dude. Oh, 60. No fucking wonder. How does that happen? How does that happen? I was talking about this the other day. I'm like, how the fuck does this happen in this broken ass state? And you're expecting me to like get paid 40K? Like, you expecting to pay like normal people 40K and expect them to live off of it? What? You can barely fucking afford. Hold up, let me see. I know they're gonna get. No, it's time to get political. Fucking rent in LA apartment year. Is that not a statistic average? Okay, according to Rent Cafe, in Los Angeles, the average is around $2,781 for rent. 5781 by 12. In 12 months, you spent $33,372. If you were being paid 40K by your fucking working place, you were only realistically yeah, I can't do it, Mama. Hell yeah. Oh, I closed my eyes! Oh! Just because I had the flash on or some shit like that. I'm so dumb. That's funny. I'm like, oh no. Well, I can show you all the pictures. It'll dox me. I'll be more comfortable showing that shit off next year, hopefully. As long as I don't feel any. Well, actually, yeah, as long as I don't feel any fucking classes. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, like, if say you got your salary was 40K, you were only able to like live, like realistically, you can have maybe like 7K saved up, right? Somehow, even though the math doesn't make sense because it's actually 33, 72, so it'd be like 600, actually 6,000, like 6,030, 6,028. You're really able to spend. Like, no, like you straight up need to get into debt. That's what that means. That is not okay. That is literally unlivable. That is an unlivable wage. What the fuck? Down 6%. Oh my god. It's only gonna get worse, man. It's only gonna go up for whatever the fuck it is. Yeah, 2,400. One of them. Like the best case scenario for average rent in Los Angeles is 1886. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know of anybody in my city. Listen, I don't live in Los Angeles, but I don't know of anybody in my city that doesn't pay like 800 for a fucking room with a bed. Like, if you have an apartment, that's like 2,000. Ain't no way you're paying 1886 in Los Angeles. What the fuck? The median rent. Okay, median is like the worst one to take because that doesn't tell you shit. It just tells you maybe it'll tell you it's like the most common one. I don't know. One bed. Okay, see, there's this better one, the Los Angeles Almanac. What was it renting about? Yeah, like no, straight up, it's bad. Okay, for example, 2 bedroom, right? Yeah, 2 bedroom is like 2,044. Straight up, no matter what. So let's go with that one, right? Because like say you have like a wife and you maybe like I don't know, you guys are barely like starting somewhere. I don't know, or like what you call it, a girlfriend and boyfriend or something, or a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. So yeah, 2044 by 12, right? This is actually better odds for fucking a living. Yeah, by 12. Did I multiple? No, yeah, no. The other one I didn't multiply because it was 2,400 straight up. No, what did I? I'm being stupid right now. Oh come on! Oh my god! Fucking X. There we go. Exit out of that shit. Yeah, 2781. That's like the worst one. Average rent. Yeah. So what was it? 1604 for like one bedroom. Yeah, 2044. I don't know. Like if it was just a bedroom, it's like, oh, it's like small. It's small. So by 24 minus 40. Yeah, you have 24K to spend. Then I guess that allows you literally, and maybe like if you have like another significant other, right? Like for sure, you guys are able to probably tackle bills or something crazy like that, or even like live in a 1 bedroom. But like yeah, if you have like a family, it's like borderline impossible to fucking live off this shit, dude. Like, holy crap. Because, like, you're spending way too much on shit. Is my fucking point.
Company, and I currently stay at home raising the kids who are 10,
Yeah.
7, and 3. I go
You
food
can't live
shopping
off
at least twice a
40K
week,
nowadays.
and I usually go to the King Cullen near our house, though I sometimes go to the nearby Target as well. Those are two of a very small list of grocery stores in our quiet town. To give as much context as possible,
Ooh.
we're an Italian family and I'm currently 40 years old. This happened not even a year ago when I was 39. I was running behind on shopping one day, so I went much later than usual. The King Cullen by us closes at 10, and it was definitely past 9 o'clock already, so I hurried over to the store with my flyers and coupons.
That's a shop?
The kids were complaining about a lack of food in the house, so I had to get a quick grocery run in. Most days I'd have to go shopping with my 3-year-old daughter Haley. Since it was late and my husband was home from work at this time, for once I was able to go shopping alone, which I consider a luxury. I got to the King Cullen, which was pretty void of people at this hour since it would soon be closing. I grabbed a cart and quickly started doing my laps down the aisles and grabbing whatever was on my list and whatever was on sale. I was in the cereal aisle when I got a tap on my shoulder, which startled me.
Oh my god.
I turned and saw a very tan man about my height with a baseball cap on, a black goatee, and a red zipper-up hoodie.
The chapter is 5 pages long, and I have to learn 21 concepts. To learn a concept, I need to do like to get 2 questions right, sometimes 3 questions right. Going with the best case scenario, I am answering 42 fucking questions. And it's like, the duration is like, it'll only take you 38 minutes. Yeah, if this was multiple choice, but this isn't. Half of these questions, not even more than half of these questions, like, choose all the right ones. And if you like miss one in the check mark, it's all wrong. It's like, I'm not doing that right now. I was gonna start doing that right now, just 'cause, like,
And jeans on. He laughed and apologized for
fuck?
startling me, and said that he'd been looking everywhere for a specific bag of chips that was in my cart, and
It's
he asked
so
where I
red.
found them. I politely told him the aisle, and he said he checked but couldn't find it. So I actually led him exactly to where I found the chips. He thanked me with his awful breath, and I smiled and was about to walk back to my cart, but then he started making pointless conversation with me about why he liked those chips so much. Something silly like the ingredients or a lack of a specific ingredient. I kept trying to make it obvious that I was inching my way back to my cart. He wouldn't get the hint though. It was when he made a weird pause and then said, "Gosh, you're pretty," that I said thank you and that I had to get back to my
That's
shopping before
weird.
they close. I went to my cart, but he followed me and kept talking to me. At this point, as politely as I could, I told him I really would just like to shop in peace. He finally seemed to get the hint and walked away. But for the rest of my time in the store that night, I kept seeing that man circling the aisles, and each time he walked past the aisle I was in, he'd slow down or even stop and just look down at me. I was getting increasingly uncomfortable and
That's
hurried up my
crazy.
shopping.
What the fuck?
When I was finally done, I went to the checkout, and as I emptied my cart, here comes Red Hoodie Guy with a whole 2 or 3 items.
Oh no.
He waits on line right behind me.
Let me
He
take
doesn't
off
say
my
a word
hoodie.
anymore, but I felt his gaze even through the back of my head.
Whoa.
When I was done checking out, I pushed my cart away, and the man called out, "Have a good night, ma'am," and I ignored it. As I was unloading my car, I noticed the Red Hoodie Guy in the parking lot, looking at me as I walked
I
to his
hate that I
car.
had a red hoodie
He
on.
got into a junky-looking Honda that must have been like 30 years old. He didn't turn the car on, though. He just sat in it. I finally finished loading my car, so I got inside, started it, and began driving out of the parking lot. I looked in my rearview mirror a few times, and I didn't see any headlights behind me, so I felt safe to drive home.
Cool.
It wasn't until I pulled into the driveway and looked to my left down the street that I realized there was a car with its headlights off driving slowly down the street approaching our house. It pulled to the curb a few houses down. It looked to be that Honda from the parking lot. I went inside the house and called my husband's name. He came downstairs looking concerned, and I told him I was followed home by a creep. He hurried outside to the stoop, but by this time the car was already gone. The following weekend, late at night when we were all in bed,
This is
I heard some
disgusting,
shuffling
man.
around outside in the side yard. I shook my husband to go check what it was, and he went to slide the window open. He saw someone right below the window trying to open the side gate to the backyard. But after hearing the window slide open, the man looked up and started to run. My husband grabbed the baseball bat from under the bed and ran outside. And when he came back a minute later, he said he saw the car speeding down the street and he tried to chase after it. He perfectly described the shitty Honda that the red hoodie guy was driving. It was undoubtedly him.
Yeah.
We phoned the police, and given the late hour, a police officer arrived to our house in under 5 minutes. I described the man and his car the best I could, and that was that. He never returned to our house, not after seeing my angry husband chasing his car on foot with a bat. It still remains uncomfortable that a creep like that knows where I live, though.
Right? Fuck that.
When I was in college, I worked at Wallbaum's. The one I worked at was a 24-hour.
What are these stores and where are they? World Bombs? What was the last one? Fucking King what?
My boss would never put me on an
King Cullen. What are these stores?
The one I worked at was a 24-hour one. So a couple unfortunate.
I've heard of
people
Walmart,
stuck
but
working
Walled
off
Bombs?
shift. I thought since I was 20 and in college that my boss
What?
would never put me on an overnight shift. But unfortunately, I guess when she asked my school schedule and I
Okay.
told her I was off Mondays and Wednesdays,
Where
she
are
saw me
you
as a
living?
perfect
Do they
sucker
have
to
these
stick on
weird
the overnight
things
shift
happening?
occasionally moving forward. One day I saw that I was scheduled
I'm just
for a
kidding.
Tuesday night from 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. I had to triple check the schedule and make sure that that was right. I felt sick seeing that. And when I asked my supervisor why I was put on the overnight
Oh,
shift,
but I can't.
he
Yeah,
told
I
me if I'm
shouldn't.
over
Oh,
18, I don't really have a choice. I considered quitting,
I don't know.
but I needed the job and money. So I just sucked it up and decided I'd do it this one time and then tell my boss I can't do it ever again because I have to study for school. So I arrived at the store at 12 o'clock and relieved my coworker
I'm just kidding.
Amanda. Half the lights in the store were out at this hour to save on electricity. There were a surprising amount of customers in the store when I got there. I guess more people than I expected would do quick midnight shopping runs. Past 1 a.m. though, the place was completely dead. Maybe 3 customers in the entire hour. As it got later in the night, there were less and less customers. It was past 2 a.m. by this point. I was as bored as humanly possible, and there hadn't been a customer in over an hour. I wondered if there were any other employees in the building. There had to be, I figured. They couldn't have a lone 20-year-old running the whole place by himself. There was some bald guy who looked like he could be a manager that kept passing by the front registers every few minutes. He had a key ring attached to his khakis with like 10 keys on it, and he was holding a small backpack.
Again, like
type
after
bag in
this
his hand.
week, homework
So I
is
said,
just
"Excuse me, are you the
gone.
manager?"
So I should
He
have
came
an
over
easier
and
time
asked if it was my
streaming.
first day on the job.
Unfortunately,
my
it does
first
mean I
night
have to
shift.
start studying for finals.
He shook my hand without giving me his name
Ugh.
and asked me if I could go to the back warehouse of the store and organize the pallets. He said he'd watch the front. I didn't exactly know what that meant, but I'd figure it out. I walked towards the back of the store, and as I did, I saw him doing something to the entrance door of the store, like he was reaching for some switch on the side of it, as if he were locking it. I made my way into the back warehouse, where I saw a tall man who looked like he were 30, wearing a manager's vest that said Wallbounds. He saw my apron and introduced himself as Rob, the night manager. I said, "Oh, I thought the guy in the front was the night manager." He looked puzzled and said, "Who?" When I described that man from before, he asked me to show him who I was talking about, because he was the only manager on duty. He didn't even make it out of the warehouse before all the lights in the store turned off. Rob told me to wait in the warehouse while he checks out what's going on. I watched as he walked through the warehouse doors into the darkness of the store, with the only light out there being from the lights of the dairy coolers that were still on. I sat on a box on a pallet and was on my phone trying to text any of my friends who could have been awake about what was happening, when I heard a door from inside the warehouse opening.
Oh my
It was on
god.
the other side of
Yeah,
the warehouse,
that's loud.
separated by the freezer and dairy fridge. There were 2 ways in and out of the warehouse back into the store. I still sat there, now with my ears perked up, listening for any sounds, and I heard quiet, slow footsteps getting closer, followed by a voice saying, "Hey kid, you in here?" But it wasn't Rob's voice. It
It's
was that
somebody
bald guy's
random.
voice. I hurried out the warehouse doors into
Hey,
the
kid,
store,
are you
but
in there?
quietly. I jogged to the front of the store looking
What the
for Rob.
fuck? Like, that's
but I
so
couldn't find
suspicious.
him.
I'm sorry.
Called out his name. Nothing. I grabbed my jacket and tried to open the exit door, but it wouldn't open automatically. So I tried to physically open it, but it was locked. I heard footsteps approaching from behind me, and I turned and almost screamed, but I realized it was Rob the manager. He flicked some lever or something on the top right of the door and unlocked it, and he said in a panicked whisper to hurry and get outside. He followed behind me. We left the store and he got right on the phone with the police, and I heard his whole conversation. He said he believed an armed man locked himself into the Waldows and was probably trying to rob the place. I told him to tell the police that I think he was coming to harm me in the warehouse, which he relayed to the operator. He told me I should go wait in my car or leave. I'm sure because he didn't want the store to be held liable for anything if something were to happen. I went and sat in my car and just watched for a little while, and within 10 minutes there were at least 4 police cars outside the store. They all went inside for a while, and I didn't see whatever was going on, so I left. I didn't quit after that though. The next time I went into work, I was told all about what happened by my supervisor. The security footage showed that bald man circling the place, acting suspicious, checking if the coast were clear to do whatever he was planning to do after locking the doors. He cut the lights in the store, and cameras showed him going straight to the warehouse where he told me to go. That's the scariest part to me, because if he were armed and robbing the place, he could have been on his way to put a gun to my head or something. The camera showed him leaving through the emergency exit in the warehouse way before the police arrived. In the end, I never worked an overnight shift again after talking to my boss, and I stayed at that job for another few months. I'm not sure if that man was ever identified.
Oh my god, loci is the word. Jesus. It's because I'm looking at root locus. But the multiple locus is loci.
I used to work as a night restock worker at a supermarket in a somewhat rural town. The store was called Great American. It was the biggest and best supermarket in the area. My shift would be as soon as the store would close at 10. I'd work from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. the latest, restocking the shelves and organizing everything before the next operating day. I of course had the keys to the store for the after hours. It would be a team of 2, myself and one other, either Terry, Carter, or Alfonso. Tonight I was supposed to be working with Terry. I arrived to the store and let myself into the back where all the inventory yet to be stocked was. I started my work using the pallet jack to bring a whole pallet of boxes out to the shop.
Oh my god, that's what we did today.
I started with the bread and nuts aisle, rotating the older loaves in the front and putting the newer loaves in the back. Halfway through, I realized I hadn't seen Terry yet. I walked to the back area of the store where the inventory was, where we'd leave our belongings. He wasn't back there yet. I left the back door cracked open with a door stopper for him when he would show up. So I went back to work for another half hour. And with still no sign of Terry, I once again went to the back of the store. He wasn't in there, but I noticed the back door was shut. I assumed that meant Terry was here somewhere. I went to open the back door and saw the door stopper was outside, which I thought was weird that he kicked it outside instead of bringing it in. I called Terry's name and it echoed through the room. He didn't call back, so I decided to call him. He picked up, sounding like he was in bed, and I asked him if he was at work. He said he wasn't coming in tonight because he was sick. Suddenly, I got the chills. I told him someone kicked the door stopper off the door, and he said it could have just come undone itself. Nobody else was scheduled to work that night. I told him feel better, and we hung up. I wasn't sure if I was convinced that the door stopper came undone itself.
Yeah, I don't think so. Just like try to check if everything's fine.
I did a quick look around just to make sure no one was in the back of the store. And when I didn't see anyone, I went back to work, though I felt a slight sense of unease the whole time.
Yeah,
I was
what the
stocking
fuck?
the remainder of the bread when I heard a loud sound echo from across the shopping floor.
Yeesh.
Okay, now someone had to be in here.
Yeah.
I got off my knees and went to the middle aisle that intersected all the other aisles. I looked straight down the aisle and stood there for a hot second, and all the way on the opposite side of the store in the dairy aisle, a man dressed in black walked past the middle aisle, looking down in my direction. I felt my heart drop. It felt like that scene from the movie Signs where the alien walks past the birthday party. I had to think logically, that maybe this was someone else filling in for Terry's shift that our boss didn't tell me about. I started to speed walk down the center aisle and yelled "excuse me" very loudly. I looked to the left down every aisle I passed since he went towards the front of the store. In one of those aisles, he was waiting at the end of it, standing there, fully facing my direction. When he saw me, he walked out of sight in the direction I was just coming from. I yelled "excuse me" again, and started to run down that aisle to catch up to him. I didn't get a good look at his face yet. When I got to the front of the aisle by the cash registers,
Uh-huh.
I looked down the
Oh
direction
my god,
he
who's
went,
robbing him?
and I
Don't
saw
tell
him
me.
all the way at the end by the bread aisle. Half his body was hidden behind the shelf. His mouth was hanging open, and he started to wave me over, but he didn't say anything. His face was freaking me out. I attempted one more time to speak to him and said, "Who are you?" And he disappeared behind the shelf. I wasn't being paid enough for this. I went outside to sit in my car and call my boss. He picked up, and I told him there was some random freak roaming around the store.
Yeah, what the
He
fuck?
told me to get him out of there if I can, or call the police to get him out. I was not going to attempt to physically remove a crazy person from
Yeah.
the store, so I called 911. I waited in my car until a police car showed up. I greeted the officer and asked him to follow me inside. We walked around the place looking for the man, and we saw him at one of the aisles again, creepily standing there again as if playing a game. When the police officer commanded him to come here, he actually listened. He was put in handcuffs, and he was the strangest man I'd ever seen. He kept smiling and looking at me non-stop, licking his lips. He had
Ew.
huge bags under his eyes. The only words he spoke were when answering the police officer, saying he was looking for a snack. I didn't like the way he was looking at me as the police officer was walking him back outside to his car. It was this menacing, threatening smile that I haven't forgotten
What
to this
the
day.
fuck?
I continued my work.
Yeah, this story
Needless to
disturbed
say, he never
me.
left any of the doors open again.
Yikes. Jesus. Just. Why am I a computer engineer? Not that I'm like immune to weird shit happening to me, right? So we're not watching this video. It's gonna be like stupid shit. Honest, to be honest. Oh my god, you know this foreshadowing. Oh my god. Gateway to hell. Gateways to hell. Obscura archive. Frame box. What is this?
This
What is
video is
this?
brought to you by longtime sponsors of the show, Raycon. So despite trying my best to practice mindfulness, I remain the type of person who frantically moves from one task to the next when doing my morning routine. Listening to me through all of fires.
Oh my god, that
best
sounds
of
like
my
me
day.
right now.
If the air back to my late, then I then head on over to Perch.
Up. Got a notification.
Picture this. You're driving along a remote mountainous road at night with nothing but your headlights to illuminate the path. The earth around you leaves you feeling claustrophobic, but even so, you press on into the darkness, relying only on indistinct radio chatter to keep yourself focused. Up ahead, you notice the road seemingly disappear and you're taken out of your trance. It's a tunnel, and one that you're not exactly thrilled to see. It's old and pitch black. You remind yourself that it's nothing more than a passageway, and you carry on. Soon the moonlight fades and you're left in the void, praying to yourself that the car does not suddenly break down. Your imagination starts to run wild, your anxiety bubbling up as you try not to speed your way through. You count as seconds go by, thinking you surely should have reached the end by now, and that's when you hear it. Now on the other side, you try to calm yourself down. That sounded like a woman's scream, but that would be impossible. Maybe it was nothing more than an animal or the product of sheer paranoia, you tell yourself.
Paranoia.
You carry on driving, taking note of the fact that there aren't any other cars nearby, and a person on foot all the way out here just seemed unlikely. You tell yourself that it was simply nothing.
I think it was simply more than nothing. I think it was my imagination. You know, here's the thing. A lot of these voiceover voices on YouTube that have 1 mil or more subscribers like to use the common fallacy that chalking something up to your imagination means that you are not trying to come to terms with what has been experienced. No. On the contrary, instead, chalking something up to your imagination simply means you have indeed recognized something happened, but you accept that it instead is part, and it was partly, not, it was fully produced by your imagination, whether it be a sensation. Yeah. How do I put all this together? Essentially, chalking something to your imagination simply means that you have fully come to terms with, yeah, this was one of my senses just acting up out of nowhere. There we go. Better way to phrase it. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you are just like not recognizing the event. It means you are recognizing that it was produced by your head.
The story I just told you could have come from just about anywhere, but was inspired by one place in particular. Kiyotaki Tunnel, located in Kyoto, Japan, a place teeming with history and relics of days long since past. While the tunnel in question isn't nearly as old as many of the area's famous structures, it still has quite the reputation regardless, and which version of the legend you get depends on who you ask. If not a woman's scream, some might tell you that traversing the tunnel made them suddenly fall ill, or that it somehow seemed to extend way beyond the point that it was supposed to, as if trying to devour the unsuspecting driver whole. But
I closed my eyes. Why'd I close my eyes?
like most
I still don't know why I did that in that
some
picture.
attribute its haunted nature to tales of alleged exploitation during its construction. Fatalities and accidents alike were also said to have plagued the path's creation, as well as other roadside tragedies once it opened up. No matter the details, people always seem to claim something otherworldly about this place. Of course, this tunnel is far from unique. York, Pennsylvania is, for the most part, pretty normal, at least on the surface. It blends in perfectly with just about anywhere else in its region, but if you're passing through its heavily wooded roads, you may just find yourself at what some people call the Seven Gates to Hell. Several versions of the myth behind this place exist, but their common denominator is a standalone gate within the woods said to be the only one visible during the day, with 6 more becoming visible only at night. This gate, of course, does exist. Some time ago, I had actually driven past its supposed location, but chose not to venture into what I assumed was private property, and of course I advise you to do the same. When it comes to the legend, however, they say that once the other gates appear, those who pass through them will eventually find themselves in a world completely divorced from our own, with the 5th gate being the point of no return. Again, you can find stories about this just about anywhere on the globe. Sometimes, however, you need not look further than just a few steps away. Mirrors, of course, are considered by many to just be creepy in general, as if the possibility of seeing a stranger appear behind you isn't bad
Mirrors
enough.
is just normal.
There are also those who believe that mirrors can either attract inhuman beings or transport us to other realms entirely. Another iteration of this type of urban legend now comfortably occupies the minds of millions online, thanks to so-called liminal spaces. Now, the word liminal is defined by Merriam-Webster as one of relating to or situated at a sensory threshold, barely perceptible or capable of eliciting a response. 2. Of relating to or being an intermediate state, phase, or condition, in between, transitional. Images of so-called liminal spaces are a much more recent occurrence, ultimately culminating in the backrooms, and whether you actually find these concepts creepy or just good meme material, the point still stands, and the concept of a creepy-ass transitional area still remains powerful to this day. Having said that, what might be the most interesting thing about places like this, though, is that sometimes we find ourselves in them without even realizing it. So how does one get to the other side of these liminal or transitional places? Well, as it turns out,
It's some little ritual watch.
Take, for example, the so-called elevator to another world. A Google search for this will tell you a few different versions of the same thing, depending on where you look. What most agree upon, however, is this. In order for this to work, the building in question needs to have at least 10 floors. Whether or not basements count isn't for certain, but it seems that having floors labeled 1 to 10 is actually ideal. Whether or not the traveler has to venture on alone is also up for interpretation, but for the sake of the spooks, let's go with it. The time of day is said to not matter, nor the type of building, so long as it meets the aforementioned specs. That said, the journey is probably best with as little distractions as possible.
Dude, I need to a new word. I need to come up with a new word.
Once inside, they need to make their way to the 4th floor. Assuming that nothing throws this off, they're supposed to stay inside as the doors open and then close once more. Next, the traveler is
I like the
set to traverse
variety of
following
concepts though that they're
sequence in
bringing
the
up.
same manner. Floor 2, floor 6, floor 2 once more, floor 10, then floor number 5. This is where things are said to pick up. On floor 5, a young woman may or may not appear once the doors open, and she may or may not enter the elevator. Travelers are advised
Yep.
to ignore this seemingly human woman.
This is
making
the
no eye
same,
contact or so much as a peep in
pretty
her
much word for
presence.
word, the same
Instead,
thing that most
they
people
carry on,
say.
pressing the key to the first floor.
I mean, but
Here,
like,
so that
what
two
else can you
things
add
happen.
when this is so locked
One, the
tight? It's so
elevator might
airtight,
start
right?
to descend as you requested. By all accounts,
Yes,
this
yes.
indicates a failure and dictates that the traveler immediately march out of the building
Ooh.
without looking back.
Escalate.
Outcome 2 is that the elevator might start to rise all on its own, in this case making a second and final stop at floor 10. Travelers experiencing second thoughts are said to be able to back out, but only before reaching the 9th floor. Pressing anything beyond that point is said to have no effect. Now, assuming that they're sure of their choice, the doors will open up on the 10th floor, and the woman who entered on the 5th may choose to speak at this time, asking the traveler where they're going or what they might be looking for. Again, this is said to be a
Flame
trap,
comes on
the
here.
woman actually being something potentially sinister in disguise. Instead of
They
answering, the
love
traveler
saying
has to
that, I
carry on,
swear.
stepping out into a world that appears identical to our own, minus a couple key elements. It's said that the other side is pitch black and silent, devoid of human
That's
life,
not
aside
really
from
what I
the
remember.
traveler who decided for
They
some
say it's
reason to
red.
visit this
There's a
place.
red sky.
Electronics
That's what
are
I
said to
remember.
not work in this realm,
At least
and
my
upon
version.
looking outside, the traveler will find nothing
What
but
I
the
heard
darkness
like a
and
long
single
while
red
ago,
cross
though.
out in the distance. As usual,
April
all
9th.
these
Oh, this
details
could be a
vary
long one.
depending on who you ask, so in truth, there is no way to say for sure what lies on the other side, aside from an uncanny version of our own world. It's
Yeah.
unclear if travelers encounter other beings there, or where the lady from the 5th floor goes once abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
Chances are she may not leave the travelers at all, maybe watching
That's my
their every
catchphrase
move as
today.
they traverse this strange
Yeah.
place.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, this urban legend wouldn't have any
I
weight
hate
to it
this so
unless there was
much.
a way for the travelers to get back home. That's the good news. The bad news here is that the return trip is said to be slightly more complicated than the first run, even if on the surface the methods seem almost identical. It's said that homesick travelers must make their way back to the exact same elevator they used when they arrived, and once again repeat the same 426 210.
Oh, I only have this stuff until
Other accounts
February.
call for that
Damn.
sequence, but instead in reverse. Either way, there are a few things to bear in mind. Past travelers claim that being on the other side can actually mess with
See,
your
there was
mind,
this like
that you might find yourself
Auto Tool one. I
disoriented
want to
or
see if they've like
confused,
uploaded
maybe
stuff
even
for
unable
my
to
like
locate the elevator that delivered you there. Others say that the world
like
itself
pictures that I just want to get for free.
the elevator almost seeming to
of
move
me.
locations entirely. Sometimes
see
it may
if one
appear that the
is
traveler has
this.
successfully arrived back home, but upon the elevator doors opening, they notice that something feels off. In this case, they're advised to repeat the sequence until they're absolutely sure that things are as they should be, never going against their own intuition.
Mhm.
Travelers are said to sometimes faint on the way back, only to inexplicably find themselves back in their own homes. Some say that this means that they're actually still on the other side, while others claim that this is actually their proper world, but they note that the traveler may now find themselves back in the dark seemingly out of nowhere. Why this happens is unknown, but it's said that some are inherently more susceptible than others. Of course, there is no way for a traveler to know this until it's too late. The elevator to another world is one of those urban legends that you're bound to have stumbled upon at least once if you've spent enough time online. And like most urban legends, it's almost impossible to pinpoint its exact author
Right.
or origin.
Exactly.
Best
It's the
guess,
same
however,
story.
comes from Lucia Peters of theghostinmymachine.com. It's an absolutely fantastic website for all things strange and unusual, but Lucia's deep dive research into the elevator from another world is especially notable. 2014 was the first time The Ghost in My Machine tackled the subject, with said article becoming the site's most popular post. In 2020, Lucia decided to look deeper into this infamous tale by turning to its alleged birthplace, East Asia.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Figures point
stuff
to Korea,
and
which did
information
turn out
that
to have a
points to
sizable
there,
amount of
but not an
personality
exact
with their Western
location.
counterparts. One source, for example, was reposted in 2010 and was the apparent documentation of one user's experience attempting to reach the other side. Per Lucia, the post's introduction mentions the OP having heard about the elevator to another world elsewhere online, already pointing us in another direction. Regardless, the post, even being a decade old at that point, followed the aforementioned steps to a T. The OP explains that one afternoon, they had decided to take the plunge, stepping into the
Well, let me
elevator
say
of their
something.
14-story apartment building. As they began the sequence, they felt nothing. Slowly but surely, however, anxiety and dizziness began to set in. By the time they pressed the button to the 5th floor, dread began overwhelming them completely, and what they claimed to have encountered next did not make it any better. The poster says that once the doors of the 5th floor opened, a young woman was standing on the other side. They described her as having a pale face, long black hair, along with an older style school uniform, one that we can assume was generally no longer in use at the time. As she entered the elevator, the OP began to panic and quickly pressed the button to the 6th floor, breaking the sequence. From there, they took the stairs all the way back down to the 1st floor and walked over to a nearby 7-Eleven, citing the need to get away from the area while they calmed
I
down.
was so done
While
on
the
them
story is
in that
definitely
frame.
interesting. As we've established, it wasn't the first account. Digging deeper, Lucia was able to unearth a paranormal message board thread from November of 2008. And this, to the best of everyone's knowledge, is where this urban legend spawned from. Its origin? Japan. Unlike the post that we
Ooh,
discussed,
okay, so they
it
found an
wasn't a
actual
personal
origin.
experience with the elevator,
Ooh.
but rather a guide on the sequence needed to reach the other side. Additionally, this post doesn't include any instructions on the return home, and is considerably more vague than subsequent variations. As for how the topic came up, the users in the thread had been discussing time travel, which eventually brought up the idea of hopping to other dimensions entirely. Needless to say, once the elevator method was mentioned, it derailed the thread and caught everyone's attention. Other users began asking questions about it, some wanting the OP to elaborate, while others asked for its source. At one point, one post does seem to state that the elevator method was a repost, but the person making this claim was unable to verify it. Another user chimed in, mentioning something called Mysterious Transfer Student. While I wasn't able to find
Mysterious
details on this,
Transfer
the sources
Student.
online will tell you that Mysterious Transfer Student originated as a novel in the 60s and would find itself adapted a number of times for
Yeah.
film as well as TV. The eponymous Mysterious Student is first encountered by the story's main character in the elevator of their apartment building, where the two are eventually trapped due to a power outage. Later on in the series, it's revealed that said transfer student is actually from another world, but based on what I could find, the elevator itself had nothing to do with it, and was merely a plot device allowing these two characters to cross paths. Of course, this clearly was not what the elevator to another world was directly based on, but we can
Website I'm
assume that the
looking
user who
for.
brought this franchise up might be inferring that it reminded them of it. As I looked further into this, I got curious and began searching for other media where an elevator has some importance to the narrative, and to my surprise, there were lists of this very thing.
Yeah, there's
right
always
on
gonna be
Disney
stuff like
Online.
that.
Eventually, I stumbled upon this film, which I had a vague memory of, and after looking into it, found that it was heavily inspired by a Japanese property, one that loosely translates to Nightmare Elevator. Just like Mysterious Transfer Student, this one started out as a book and would go on to garner several adaptations, including a 2007 TV drama as well as a 2008 theater run. September of 2008, to be exact. Just a couple months shy of the November 2008 post that seemingly
this.
sparked it all. Now, I'm not at all insinuating that this was the definitive source of inspiration for the elevator to another world. In fact, from what I understand, Nightmare Elevator, much like the 2010 maybe ripoff version, is about a group of strangers who find themselves stuck in an elevator together, no other dimensions included. Of course, inspiration could come from any number of places, and it goes without saying that elevators have made people uneasy for one reason or another, probably since their very introduction. For some, they're even a full-blown phobia. With all that in mind, however, I will bring up one last thing that Lucia uncovered in her 2020 deep dive. In June 2006, the Minato Ward elevator incident occurred, an elevator malfunction that resulted
Ooh,
in the passing of
fuck,
a
yeah.
16-year-old high school student.
That
This understandably
sucks.
became national news and was supposedly just one case of malfunction out of many for a specific brand of elevators at the time. Now, what exactly happened? According to reports, the individual had gotten into the elevator with his bike, and upon arriving at his floor, attempted to back out with it. Before he could get out, the elevator
Jesus.
abruptly began ascending, pinning both him and his bike down. Lucia points out the obvious parallels here.
Yeah.
An elevator starting to ascend seemingly on its own. Again, it's impossible to pinpoint what exactly sparked the elevator to another world, but what was outlined here today was most likely in Japan's collective consciousness around the time that it showed up. It seems that one way or another, though, this urban legend was bound to manifest somewhere.
Yeah,
New
right?
technologies over the course of human existence have always had a way of making our imaginations run wild. And on top of that, we've always been captivated by the ideas of other worlds being out there, sometimes hidden right under our noses. This next tale is no different, but unlike the elevator to another world, we can say with absolute certainty that it was born from real life.
Damn, I
We've
can.
all heard of the space race, but during this particular time in our world's history,
Yeah, I
there were
cannot
actually
find this
other attempts by
website. Where
various
is
countries to
it?
scientifically outdo one another, and one of them
I forgot
involved
its
digging as
name.
deep as possible into the Earth's crust. Naturally, the Soviet Union threw their hat in the ring, in 1970 taking the first step of what would ultimately be a 20-year journey. By the project's end, the hole they had created stood at roughly 9 miles deep and would eventually become the deepest man-made hole ever created. And with such a title, it's no surprise how rumors and speculation about it began to crop up. People across the globe began to believe that the project had been abandoned due to something unexpected occurring, that the scientists who were drilling had suddenly found a hollow cavity all those miles beneath their feet. Said cavity was said to be hot.
Yeah.
Extremely
That would make sense if
Some
it's in the
rumors saying
crust.
temperatures of up to 2,000 degrees had been documented. As scientists tend to do, the ones in charge of this project allegedly lowered a microphone some way into the hole,
And they heard
according to the
screaming,
story,
yeah,
what
but
they heard upon replaying the tape was nothing
here's the thing, that's a hoax. I don't know if she's gonna play the
short
tape.
of nightmarish. In this recording were the sounds
Look
of
again, I
voices
like the series so
screaming and
far.
wailing.
This first
Layers
episode.
upon layers of absolute
Is it
chaos and agony.
play?
Some claim the researchers were driven mad by what they heard, ultimately resulting in the hole being closed up and never spoken of again. This version of events found its way around the globe very quickly in pre-internet times, settling amongst religious circles who claimed it was scientific proof of the existence of hell, as well as tabloids seeking
But it was a
HC's
hoax. It
headline
was
for their
all a
next
hoax.
release. People soon began referring to this hole as the Well to Hell, with its alleged location being somewhere in Siberia. Naturally, the story found itself on radio as well, most notably being discussed in the late 90s on a paranormal talk show called AM Coast to Coast. After taking some calls from listeners about the topic, host Art Bell dropped a bombshell, revealing that he had recently received an email from a listener who had a copy of the infamous recording. The following is a recreation of that broadcast.
Now I've got a clean copy of it now, and I warn you, this could scare you. Here's the email. Dear Art Bell, I just started listening to your radio show.
This is not the actual one.
A bombshell.
Today we're going to be debunking these
that echoed through here. Dreams in the Baron's day were real.
Alright, a casual glance at this should...
Yeah, 16 years ago. I think it's this one.
This could scare you. Here's the email. Dear Art Bell, I just recently began listening to your radio.
And not this one.
And could not believe it when you talked about the sounds from hell tonight. My uncle had told me this
It's
story.
a very it's like a young person fucking saying it in contrast to this old guy right
Dear
here.
Art Bell, I just recently began listening to your radio show and could not believe it when you talked about the...
Yeah, this is by Zendier 101, 16 years ago. Holy shit, 2006 was 16 years ago. Holy shit, that was 16 years ago. Oh my god, I remember getting on YouTube in like 2010, 11-ish. I think 2011, and fucking finding this on YouTube, and like, it was fucking awesome. It was like, what, 5 years? Like, it would, like, back then I would have seen like 5 years ago, and I would have been like, what the fuck is this?
Didn't believe him, like one of your listeners, who discounted
Crazy
the story
trip
as nothing
life
more than a
is.
religious newspaper fabricated account. The story about the digging, the hearing of sounds from hell, is very real. It did occur in Siberia. My uncle collected video and so forth on the paranormal, supernatural. He passed away fairly recently, but he would have loved your show. He had me listen to one of the audio tapes he had on the sounds from hell in Siberia, and I copied it. He received his copy from a friend who worked at the BBC. It took me a while to find it tonight, but attached is the sound from my uncle's tapes. It's not the greatest quality, but the sounds are there. I was very hesitant to send you this, as the sound bothers me to listen to. I suggest that if you do play it on the program, warn listeners in advance, so that they may have the option of turning the radio off for 30 seconds while it plays. It has always haunted me. To those who discounted the Siberia Sounds from Hell story, it is true, and I, for one, wish it wasn't. Rick, listening from Chicago. And so I submit now a better copy to you. And I warn you, what you're about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
And this is the actual thing. It's pretty crazy.
The story of the Well to Hell is something that has endured the test of time, now in the modern day making its home online. And while it's definitely a fun story rooted in real life, it goes without saying that more than a few creative liberties were taken in the name of forging this version of events. As we've established, the hole is a very real thing, but instead of a fiery pit, it currently sits abandoned and bolted shut, something made possible by its 9-inch diameter, a long shot from the mental image the story might have given you. Its official name is the Kola Superdeep Borehole.
What is it called?
Kola being a place in Russia bordering Norway. For reference, this is not in fact in Siberia like the story claims, and to add on top of that, the Smithsonian claims that temperatures inside the hole were roughly 365 degrees Fahrenheit, a far cry from the alleged 2000. They also add that this was higher than expected, the researchers only anticipating temperatures of roughly 200 degrees. The article makes a claim that this is why the project was ultimately abandoned, while other sources like the BBC claim it was due to the fall of the Soviet Union. It is entirely possible that both of these explanations are true, but regardless, it's not hard to see where the story of hellish temperatures causing researchers to flee had actually come from, and there is admittedly something inherently creepy about the idea of a 9-mile deep hole in the earth, even if it's not one that you couldn't possibly fall into. There's something to be said for the fact that time and time again, we as a species find ourselves so captivated by other worlds that we seem to always find new ways to reinvent stories about pathways to them.
Right.
Whether you believe in them or not, they seem to be embedded in our imaginations and culture alike, and seem to not be going anywhere anytime soon. Now, personally, I always tend to lean towards skepticism, but as a child growing up in the rural Philippines, I'd always hear my folks tell kids not to play hide-and-seek at night, lest they be whisked away by some human beings and taken to another world. Whether or not that's
cultures how that happened,
belief or just something my family concocted, I'd be lying if I said that the idea didn't stick with me, and that it didn't sort of creep me out to this very day.
Well, with that being said, thank you all so much for coming by. I am going to rest tonight because I feel tired from doing nothing. Honestly, it's been a pretty recent. But the truth is, I'm almost done. I'm holding in there. Would click that video up here. Actually, that's the video. The one with the blue frame is the one we were gonna watch. One up there. But like, it's not today. That's it. Sure, later. Good night, whatever it is, and yeah. Bye and good night.